Welcome to today's Fireside Chat, Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Here we talk with people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes. I'm thrilled to be speaking with today's guest, Rebecca Rizzio. Rebecca founded Luminous Talent in 2024. She has 25 years of sales and business development experience and over a decade of experience in the talent acquisition industry. She believes in a hands-on relational approach to recruiting and is committed to delivering the ideal candidate and client experience. Her passion is helping small to medium-sized businesses become successful in finding, developing, and retaining talent. She is also a film and theater director and producer. Welcome to Behind the Build, Becky. If I
Thank
could
you,
call you
Curtis.
Becky.
Thanks for having me. Very nice to be here.
So I've been very much looking forward to this, and partially because the arts is really important to me. I spent 15 years on the jazz circuit, and so I get to talk to another person very deeply involved in the arts and theater. You are an award-winning filmmaker and musical producer. Can I hear a little bit about this? Because I'm fascinated.
Oh, sure. Well, yes. We creatives, we just gel, don't we? We creatives find a way to each other. Yes, it's been a part of my life, my whole life. Theater has, film hasn't. The film came more recently, but theater forever. I started out performing a little bit. I wasn't very talented. I couldn't really dance. I couldn't really sing. I loved musicals. That was the problem, and I couldn't sing or dance. So I had to figure out another option. And kind of a lifelong storyteller, I found my way into directing, and I became a director locally here to the Twin Cities and did a lot of plays and musicals, and ultimately came across an original musical that I've developed over the past. Oh, it's been, we've been at it about 11 years now. The musical is called Philly and the Dreamer, a really fun, high energy family show that is in development, or is done with development and now ready to move forward. And then I discovered film kind of more recently after I encountered a story that I felt was documentary worthy, and that's what led to the filmmaking.
Um, I, it's very cool. I'm a little bit jealous. Actually, scratch that. I'm a lot of bit jealous.
Mhm.
I'm consider myself really kind of mediocre in the music world, although I pursued it anyways. So
What's your instrument, Curtis? What's your instrument?
I am principally a guitar player. I doubled on upright bass. Realized shortly after, right, that nobody really needs a guitar player, but everybody needs a bass player. As long as you can
Everybody
play
needs
in tune and in time, you will have a lot of work. Um, so I'm super curious. What eventually drew you to human resources and the human resources arena, particularly in recruiting? I mean, is it something you knew you wanted to do? Did you find yourself in the space and enjoyed it? How did you get here?
Yeah, I found myself in this space. I had been working at Concordia College, my alma mater, in fundraising. So I had a background in pharmaceutical sales, and decided that wasn't really where I wanted to be. And at the time, found that I was really missing the creative piece of my life, right? So I
Okay.
was like, oh no, I'm 25 and I'm a drug rep, and my life is over because I want to be a director and I want to be on Broadway, and I've kind of gone this way and I can never go back. And I ultimately discovered that I could, be involved in theater and work, and but moved to a career that I felt more passionate about, which was higher ed fundraising. And at that time, had a lot of fun with it. I mean, it was storytelling. It was getting behind an institution that, Concordia College in Moorhead, that I personally felt very passionate about. And at that time, it kind of had a shelf life. It was one of those things where I was part of it. I'd been there for 4 years in college, and I came back 10 years later and worked another 4 years, and then was kind of ready to get back into some sort of corporate, get out of academia. Was a little bit, it was a slower pace, and I was ready for a faster pace. And then one of the alums that I had worked with while I was at the college had a business that was a consulting business. And so I came across them, and just it said, well, I don't want to do anything in sales anymore. And then ultimately found that it was a different type of sale, where it was really taking people and helping to find ultimately the right environment for those people. So it wasn't direct placement recruiting, but it was my first step, and my first I guess my first little forte, or what's the word I'm looking for, Chris? The first time I landed in recruiting, and I found that I really loved the connecting the people piece of it, and just kind of the understanding human behavior piece of it. So I did that, and then went to another company where I ultimately was doing more direct placement, and then decided to start my own business last year.
Kind of a Renaissance woman. I didn't realize you also have a background then in pharmaceuticals, pharmaceutical sales, right? Then into the people business. I guess I mean, and your own consulting. But I mean, to some degree, right? We're still selling. You're still selling. You're still storytelling.
Mhm.
So utilizing all of your strengths in a couple of different ways. So I love having other entrepreneurs on behind the build, and you have a ton of fantastic experience in talent acquisition, HR related consulting. I'm curious, having that experience, right? What drove you to sort of strike out on your own and launch Luminous Talent? And
Well,
maybe you can also tell us a little bit about Luminous Talent.
Luminous Talent, sure. It was kind of, so I loved the what I love about recruiting is it's not it's really understanding human behavior, and building truly authentic connections with people. Because if you're happy in your job, and you're happy with your team at work, your life is so much better. I think I learned from a young age, right out of school, that, I mean, I had those Sunday night kind of, you know, what do you call this? Like, you're like, oh no, I got to start the week again. And I loved where I was at. I worked for a great company, Eli Lilly and Company, but it was just not, it wasn't something I like was super excited about every Monday morning. So I know what that's like. And so with recruiting, I had the opportunity to bring people to companies they may or may not know, and most likely don't know, and kind of open up a whole new world to them, which I did myself when I left Lilly and I went to higher ed fundraising. It was just this whole new breath of fresh air, and I was able to make space in my life for the things that I really love to do, which was theater and all that at the time. So I felt very passionately about that. And as far as kind of the entrepreneurial thing, my grandma came from a family of 13 people, and 9 out of those 13 kids had their own businesses. They lived in this small town this is my next project, this small town in northern Minnesota, and one had the bowling alley, and one had the furniture store, and one had the grocery store, and my grandma had the beauty shop, and so
Your
they all kind of,
family like had their own BNI group, like
yes, they
just
did, before
just
it
with
was a
your
thing.
family in it.
I know. See, it's a Netflix series. I'm telling you, it really is. And there's probably some connections to Chicago. They're Italian too, so that's another piece of the story. And so I always think I had it in me, and a lot of the projects, and especially creating the musical, sort of they would lend themselves to a bit of an entrepreneurial sort of focus. And so with recruiting, it was like, well, I really liked doing it. I didn't necessarily have any. I worked for really good companies, for really great people, with really great recruiters. So it was still a little bit of that imposter syndrome, that what am I going to do that's better than anyone else or more unique than anyone else? And then I realized I just love to do it, and I want to do it in the way that feels the most authentic to me and how I work. So I want to work with the best clients that have the best cultures, and I want to help the candidates that are looking to kind of course correct in terms of their careers. So it's been a really great gift, and it's been a lot of fun.
Tell me about some of the clients you work with at Loomis. I mean, we don't have to name names, but I'm really curious to hear a little bit about what the makeup looks like.
Yeah, sure. No, they're super cool. They're small to mid-sized businesses, all of them. They're not. We don't work with the large, the ones with great name recognition, right? Like, because a lot of those companies, and everybody wants to work at Medtronic, or wants to work at a lot of Google or Apple or all those places. And what's the most fun for me personally are these small businesses that have been around for 50 years and no one's ever heard of them. They have really great products, they have really great services, and they do really, really well, but they aren't places that people are necessarily seeking, right? As for employment.
Hmm.
So we work with, companies that build software, companies that build
Okay.
retaining walls, companies that, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of
Wow. Okay.
technology, folks that look for business development. We do a lot of business development type work,
Really?
because they all have, yeah, that's kind of become a little niche for like these companies that are like, hey, we have this really great thing going on and we don't have anybody out there selling it, so we need people to help us do that. And so that's all been a lot of fun. So they're all small, and they're not well known, and so it's really fun to be the brand ambassador for those
So,
companies.
as part of the talent acquisition and recruiting, you also do some light business development for these companies that you're working with. That's kind of fascinating. I haven't heard really of that, you know, that I haven't heard of a lot of talent acquisition companies that have that side to them.
Well, I want to clarify that too, Curtis. It's not that I'm out doing the business development necessarily. It's that we're helping them find the people to do it and potentially coaching them in
Okay,
that world. So
got it.
if they may not have, hey, I don't like, we're a bunch of engineers. We don't know how to sell this thing. We know we have a really good product.
Right.
So help us come up with the job description. Help us,
All
develop an
right. I
ideal candidate.
follow.
That's what we'll typically do.
Finding some of those gaps that they have and finding out how to source the right talent to fill those gaps, given that those organizations may not have the specs,
Right.
already put together. And so that's part of what you work with them doing, is really developing these positions so that you're getting the right butts in the right seats.
Right, and telling their stories, because
Hmm.
they can't always see it because they're so in the thick of it. They can't always see like what an opportunity they have for somebody, and
Right.
that's the best part of it. It's like, hey, like Mustard Hub. I mean, look at these places that are. I mean, they're just really cool stories and really cool companies, and people just don't. It's not. They're just not. They're not the necessarily have the name recognition. So it's fun to talk about them and just really get their fire started in a way.
I
You know.
bet. I bet. And it kind of makes me curious. I mean, are there are there specific problems or pain points that your team specifically is really obsessed with solving with some of these, or for some of these clients, whether or not they even know they have these problems or pain points or not?
The major one I would say, there's two I guess that come to mind. The one would be, um, I don't know that they're aware that recruiting isn't a passive thing. You don't toss out a job description and wait for the right person to show up. It has to be very active and very intentional. So a lot of times they'll say, well, we don't need a recruiting company to help us because we have Sally who will post a job on LinkedIn, and that's great, but Sally probably also does payroll and benefits and
Hmm.
employee engagement and
Sure.
like performance reviews and all those other things, right? So there's so much work on that plate that Sally isn't out you know screaming from the rafters how wonderful this opportunity is to attract the right, necessarily a lot of the right talent. So it's a very like getting out there and proactively looking for the people. So some of it is just convincing an organization that is a pain point that they don't know exists, because hey, you're not going to just you can find way better people. And I don't mean way more qualified, way better culture fit, all that, if you're more actively looking and you
Yeah.
can cast a wider net that way. And
I
the
would
second
think.
pain point I would say is more when you look at more the manufacturing companies, where they need the talent on the production floor, and it's really hard to find those people because they're few and far between now. Skilled labor is much harder, the trades, fewer people going into it, and very, very good and high paying jobs. So I highly encourage those kids that like to tinker and play around with their hand, go to trade school and you'll come out smelling like a rose. It's awesome. But they struggle to find the talent. And so we could say, well, hey, let's go build some relationships with these technical schools so we can tell your story and kind of create a pipeline, because
Yeah.
those people aren't sitting on LinkedIn all day on their laptops all day waiting for in-mails to come in on LinkedIn. They're out on the floor working. And how do you where do those people go? How do you find those people? And we found some unique ways to find those people that I can't that that are really kind of clever and a little bit outside of the box, I would say.
I would think that that's a misconception, right? About like, some just assuming that if I post my job, people will come, and clearly that's not the case. I do like that you explore all these really clever and creative ways to find people. So Tell me more about why the clients come to you versus others. What's the secret sauce in there? Where do these clever ideas come from?
Come from? Well, the team, I mean, good recruiters that we've worked with and we have on our team have come up with a couple. Craigslist was one example for where we found a couple candidates for a company, and I hadn't considered that. That was a young Gen Z recruiter that came up with that idea. But some of them, it's I think it's just thinking about where do you find them. There's more. There may be a reason to be on Instagram and Facebook more than companies might think. Um, because when people are sitting on their phones and scrolling, that's where they are. TikTok, we made TikToks. I was never on TikTok. I didn't make the TikTok. I had the young person do it. But those are kinds of the things that we try to do. And why they come to us. Recruiting is really, it really is all, it's a people thing, and it's a relationship thing. And
Mhm.
I've been lucky to have been in the Twin Cities for 20 years, and I have a wonderful network of people and a lot of people that I know, and have sent referrals, and that's really how a lot of it has come about. It's been just knowing the people, people that I've worked with in the past that come back, which is wonderful, always a compliment. But it's also getting out and networking and meeting new people, and joining certain peer groups and all that. So you get to know the community in a different way, and so you can ask them, hey, you hear somebody might be having trouble, and then you're able to kind of ask the questions and potentially help them. So yeah.
Or you just somehow join your family and are immediately part of a peer group of, like the entire
Right,
community of business owners.
right.
Um,
That works too.
I love that you talked about being in the people business. To some degree, I feel like, and funny enough, the more that I think we lean into technology, right? Relationships become that much more important, right? We're all sort of in the people business to some degree, but we talk a lot about people problems here at Mustard Hub, and a lot of these people problems start, I think, well before a hire is even made. If you think of some businesses today, those that you have, some that you have not worked with, what are some people problems organizations are facing?
Well, it's interesting. I think there was kind of the whole hybrid, remote, bring people on site. I mean, that seemed to be a challenge for a while, at least with the larger companies too, particular. And how do we engage people? How do we get people to want to come back to the office when we got so used to sort of not being in the office? Now it seems to be kind of the opposite. Whereas I'm finding when people are required to be on site, they're much more willing to do it now. They've kind of gotten that fatigue, right? They're like, I want to get back in the office and be with the people and all of that. So that seems to be changing a lot, and it seems to be too. People are there's a lot of I mean, personally, it feels like apathy too, sometimes in terms of professionalism. We've lost some of that. Coming out of school for me, I mean, I went to corporate America and I was taught how to write an email and how to show up to a meeting and all those things. And people just aren't taught that anymore, really. So there's a lot more like conversations that we have with our clients about, hey, he was on his phone during a meeting, or he had
Yeah.
his camera shut off, or it seems to be like those kinds of things where we're losing a little bit of that professional polish and we're becoming a little too casual. And I personally am very casual, I grew up in corporate America, so I have at least the background where I kind of know when to put the suit on, as they say, right? Which is changing, I feel like.
Yeah. I think, man, I really think you nailed it. I think that it's something I talk about a lot with folks, and I like the words you used, professional polish. I've never used that. I'm totally going to steal it from you.
Good.
But it is lacking, and and it could be for a number of reasons. I'm not sure. I wouldn't consider myself the expert to be able to identify where any and all of these issues are coming from, but it's definitely there. So it is. I mean, it's an interesting time. It seems like a lot of job seekers are having trouble securing a lot of, or maybe any, relevant employment, not just roles that are kind of well suited to their experience and their skill level, but at the same time, I think a lot of employers and hiring managers seem to be having trouble finding workers. You mentioned that there's a lot of talent out there. Um, are both of these things true? I mean, how are people struggling on both sides of this equation?
Yes, and it's very interesting. I want to actually write my next blog post about this. I don't know if in the '90s there was a song Reba McEntire sang called "Why Haven't I Heard from You," and she had this little video about how, like, it's really easy to pick up the phone and just call me. Why haven't I heard from you? Send a bus, send a plane, send whatever. And I feel like that's how candidates feel these days in the job market. There's so many really highly qualified people that they'll have 2, 3, 4 interviews with the company, and then like crickets, right? Like there's no communication. The simplest thing to do, honestly, to stand out is to communicate. It's unbelievable. Write an email, send a text, make a phone call. It's unbelievable how many people I hear from that say, I was the number one candidate. The recruiters and I was internal and external recruiters, both hiring managers of all kinds, right? They're just, and people are busy. And I think a lot of it too, I was thinking, what is the reason that we struggle so much with communication? And a lot of it is because there's so many channels, right? We've got email, we've got text, we've got phone, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook, we've got LinkedIn. We've got so many inboxes that we just can't keep track of all of them. And so it's just like, you just kind of, it's overload and you drop 27 balls all the time. So that seems to be what a lot of the candidates are experiencing. And as far as the employers, I don't know, there's a lot of hesitation. They will have 2, 3, 4 interviews now, and there's not anything new coming out of that interview, but they're still like,
No.
we need one more interview. We need you to
Right,
talk to this
right.
person. You need to talk to,
With another group, another leader.
yes.
Sometimes I've seen it as much as 5 or 6, and then I'm thinking to myself, what could you possibly be learning in that 6th interview? And if I'm a candidate after number 3, I would seriously start reconsidering my interest.
That, thank you, Curtis, for bringing that up, because that's true. The other problem employers have, they don't realize how that is a reflection on their brand when they do the things that they do to these candidates. And so
Yeah.
I also feel a responsibility. It's hard because, right, because they're our clients, and we serve two clients. We have the clients and we have the candidates, but it's my job to protect their brand too. And when they're not getting back, or they're saying, yeah, I'll interview them, I'll look at them in a couple weeks, or I'll get to it when I get home, it's just not, it just doesn't show good consideration for these candidates, because these people have been out of work for a month, 6 months, 18 months in some cases. And there's a hiring manager that's just kind of, when I get to it. And it doesn't paint a good picture. And it's hard to say that to a client as a recruiter, but I think it's our responsibility to our candidates, because ultimately they're our word of mouth marketing, the candidates, because they can be out saying, oh yeah, Luminous got back to me, or Luminous dropped the ball, or whatever. So it's that whole thing that you have to be able to kind of manage, I think, which is a good point to bring up.
I might even make an argument that retention starts at first touch. You know, they may not be part of the organization yet, but they're going to feel whether or not they're a priority to the organization. And you know, individuals like to stay with organizations that make them feel good, that appreciate what they do, that are considerate of their time, right? And if at the very beginning of the entire process, they feel that lack of consideration, like you're talking about, um, if they do move forward, if they do get hired, right, there might already be a little bit of that bad taste seated. But,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't know. So, I mean, you make a really good point about a lot of things that managers could do better when it comes to sourcing and hiring folks. What about, are they getting in their own way? Are there things that they need to stop doing?
Hmm. Well,
Everything.
yeah. No, I think they do a lot of things really well. I think sometimes one thing that I experience a lot is I shouldn't maybe admit this, but I very rarely look that closely at anybody's resume. I
Mm,
talk to them. I look at their LinkedIn profile, and then when I talk to them, I talk to them. And I might look at it, but there are hiring managers and people that, right, they just I had a hiring manager, he just would redline that thing and look at every detail. And I just think, because I feel like that ChatGPT is writing a lot of resumes anyway. So to me, I want to hear what the person has to say. And I think you get in your own way when you discount a candidate simply based on a resume. Especially if the candidate's coming from an external third party recruiter that you trust. If it's a third party recruiter that just tosses resumes at you, different story. But if it's a third party recruiter that you've engaged to work with you and you feel like you have that, you're getting that personal touch that you need, then there's a level of hey, you know what? Don't bother to scour this resume too much. Let me tell you why I think this person is a good fit.
Mm.
And then just trust that, because if you can be an extension of that hiring manager's team, which is what we hope to be always, then you can have that real easy secondhand communication, shorthand communication that is just that you don't get when you're just getting 200 and 300 applicants on LinkedIn.
What about for job seekers? I mean, is there something that they could be doing better? Are there common issues you see candidates doing that are preventing them from landing the kind of roles that they want?
Mm. I think that's a really good question, and I always say it's. I mean, every job I think I ever found, I ever had, what is starting with my first job in 1999 before there was LinkedIn or an internet or anything else. I don't know, but that came through my network. It's always so much about who you know, and I think a lot of people get into their, because I hear this from a lot of candidates. They get into a job and then they sort of let their networking go. It's
Right.
really important to just stay close to people and to talk to people and to be clear with what you're looking for, and to not, I think, to not expect that it's gonna, you can sit down with 20 people and, a week in conversation, and it's you have to be memorable and you have to be able to stand out, and you have to be able to open your mind, I think, to other things too, because a lot of times people have a certain level they want, or a certain industry, or certain, and by just getting out networking and talking to people, and opening your mind a little bit, it seems to give people much more opportunity. But it is really hard, and that's why I feel that networking is so important, whether you like it or not, or it's just
Yeah.
a lot of it comes from who you know, or somebody refers you, or I mean, that just happens a lot of the time.
This is great feedback. I'm curious though, what role do you think AI, you mentioned about how a lot of these resumes are being, created by AI, by Chat GPT. Um, I'd like to hear more about the role that you feel like AI plays in all this. And I know that there's a lot of concerns from job seekers about the hiring bias, right? Keyword based filtering, that ignores a lot of qualified candidates when there's a lot of AI hiring tools come into the mix, not necessarily creating the resumes, but the hiring tools. How warranted are these worries? If they're genuine, what should hiring managers and job seekers do to make good matches?
Yeah, that is a really good, and that's kind of it's a really good question, because it is a thing, and
Yeah.
it, I think it goes back to the networking piece of it, and really the human piece. I think there will always be, no matter how, and AI is wonderful and it creates a lot of efficiencies, and it's done that with our business too, but ultimately people are people, and so if you can connect with people and you can find a way to authentically connect with people, you are going to get kicked out by bots. That is going to happen. You're going to apply for a job on LinkedIn, you're going to get overlooked even though you're a perfect fit. That's why the more you can leverage your network and people and show up and be present and memorable, the better off you'll be, because especially I get a lot we get a lot of applicants for jobs that we post, and I mean, most of them aren't a fit, but if your story is right, I mean, I personally look at all of them, or our recruiters do. So we personally look through all the applicants. We aren't having a bot kick them out. In larger companies, that's the case. In smaller companies, I would say it's not. So you do have the chance and the potential to stand out. A LinkedIn profile is really important. I mean, because oftentimes people will look at that. Hire managers will look at that. So if you can be reflective of what they need on your LinkedIn profile, that'll help you stand out too. And it also helps you get a recruiter's attention. So there are things that you can do that you can stand out just by being really clear and unique in your conversation. And I would say just keep talking to people, because ultimately it's people who hire people. And that's at the core of all of it.
I
That's not
love
going to
that. It's people that hire people. I think if folks get something from this, that needs to be sort of sectioned out and shared on LinkedIn, because it's true. Aside from the networking side of it, what do job seekers need to do now to be more competitive? To be that competitive candidate, to stand out in the market. LinkedIn, that's a great suggestion. I know that a lot of recruiters really focus heavily on that. What else are you seeing employers looking for?
Well, I think a lot of times too, they, recruit candidates can do things that they can. I mean, a lot of them will get professional certifications, or they'll do
Mhm.
something, kind of go the extra mile while they're not working. They'll be doing things to kind of keep busy, and I think that's important too. If you can find a certification you want, or there's something that you're passionate about, you get on a board or join a nonprofit or help, doing things like that that get you out and active and doing things to kind of, a lot of people they take time off and hang out with the kids or whatever, and that's good too. But if you have some time and there's time that you have to do things you really like to do that you haven't done before, go do them. Take a
Yeah.
class, go take a pottery class, go write a book, do these things, because you're always meeting people when you do those things. And my worlds collide all the time, where I'll meet somebody who, I've had former clients that have become investors on my musical, right? There's always these worlds that collide. And um, so the more you can kind of get out there and do things that you like to do and want to do, you'll meet more people. I feel like that way too, which all helps keep you fresh and
Yeah.
not getting so, because a lot of it is just, you get beaten down. And I would also say, have somebody that you can go to and just vent, because super
Yeah.
frustrating. It's super, super frustrating. And you need to be able to get that out too, and kind of regroup and refresh and then come back at it.
Um, I mean, that by itself, I mean, the advice is incredible because it does several things for you. I think A, right, you could potentially be building your skill sets. B, you're expanding your network, and that network, as we already talked about, is probably one of the most powerful things that you can do to help in your job search. And then number three, it kind of gives you that outlet, right? You can stay fresh. You can, keep your mind on a lot of different things, and so that's pretty powerful by itself. So on the other side of the coin, then what do employers need to be doing to attract the right candidates, to get the top talent that they want to join them? I mean, do you think that these organizations are, generally well positioned to attract the kind of people that they want to hire, to retain? What are the things they need to be doing?
Well, it was really common for a while to kind of, put in beer taps and a ping pong table, and that was kind of the way to get people to want to be there. Everybody kind of does that now. There's like beer in every cooler in the Twin Cities, and ping pong tables everywhere and all that. It really, people ultimately want it. That was what you talked about earlier. They want to feel appreciated. They want to feel like they're a part of something. They want to, it's culture, and how you treat people and how you show up for them, and how you, I mean, I've had clients that come, companies are very toxic and shaming environments, and it's unbelievable that that exists. I mean, you kind of forget that. I mean, you don't think that that's out there. You think, well, people, because that's an old school mentality of kind of talking down to people. And my dad would come in at 1 minute late to work, and he'd get, everybody would get in trouble back in the days, back in the olden days, right, like we call them. But now it's just so much more flexible and easy. But so you don't realize that there's still environments that exist where people are not respected and they're not treated
Yeah.
well. And so just kind of creating that sort of fun team environment. It shouldn't feel forced. It doesn't need to be, oh, we have Taco Tuesdays every week because we're trying to get people in the office, but show the appreciation and thank them, and just create a culture of openness and positivity. And all those things are what people, think about what the types of environment you want to be in. And it's amazing that there are a lot of companies that do it very well. There are also a lot of companies that don't do it well at all still.
I um I probably would want to be part of any organization that has Taco Tuesdays. That's probably my greatest hobby is tacos.
Sounds fun.
But yeah, no, you make a good point, and what it kind of leads me to think, those who get hired that stick around, the things that these folks really, really want in these organizations, right? I'm curious you know, what makes them interested in a role, then take the job, and then actually stay on board, right? So here we talk, Mustard Hub, we talk a lot about rewards and recognition and non-traditional benefits and traditional benefits and portable benefits and perks, right? We talk a lot about collaboration and these kind of things. When considering, workers' total rewards package, what elements do you see job seekers really wanting to see included? Are there certain benefits that seem to be driving these decisions for candidates, or that seem to fuel the retention more than others?
It seems like, it's all the things you're talking about, right? There's the flexibility. There's kind of the, I mean, we're kind of a flexible PTO. We don't really have a PTO policy, right? We're a small startup, but we let people kind of do the work. It's like more about getting the work done and being less concerned about how people get that work done. That flexibility seems to be really important to people. And I think too, I don't know that the world is ever going to be the way that it was, where you stay someplace for 30 years because you're going to get your pension and you're going to do those things. So things like profit sharing and things like that, the flexible sort of nature of the work, and you need to work from, Phoenix for the winter because you want to go there, and they allow them to do that. I mean, those things mean a lot to people because they just seem to want to be, there's kind of this sort of, we're calling it now, it's going to be like this gig, sort of this gig, the gig economy, right? Where everybody
Yeah, yeah.
wants, it's much more, you're in charge of your own destiny and your own future. And companies that sort of embrace that, sort of like allow the employees that want that entrepreneurial sort of mindset and experience, those that kind of allow them that freedom, I mean, they can do super well with them because they just want to be a little bit more in charge of their own destiny. I feel a lot of people are asking, how much time do I get off? How much? That's more and more important to people, and it always has been. But I would say the flexibility is just what happens when it snows, what happens when my kid's sick, and just knowing that that's never going to be an issue seems to keep it. Ultimately, still though, people leave companies because of their leadership. That's the number one reason they leave. They don't leave because of the job; they leave because of the person that they're reporting to. That's most often the case.
Yeah. 100%. I definitely would agree with that. And I think you're right. Times have really changed. 60 years ago, um, hiring, was a lot different. People were brought on board, they stuck around, waited until they retired, got a nice gold watch, maybe a trip to Florida, and life was pretty good then. And it's dramatically changed since then. It's gone through so many phases, right? There was, this rise of what I would consider maybe market culture in the 80s, right? Ladder climbing, which, existed before then, but, it sort of evolved into this new beast, right? Followed by a lot of, work-life balance, inclusion. There were so many different things that I think we were seeing, I think, over the last 20, 25 years, all sort of culminated in this right, COVID came, right? The great resignation, right? We all felt it. And as we get back to normalcy, and I think to some degree we have returned to normalcy, but um, but it's very, very, very different than it was before, and it's not going backwards. Right, in the next 5 years, I think we estimate, nearly 60% of the workforce is going to be part of the gig economy. Maybe not, full time, but in some capacity, and that's great. Like you said, people want some of that flexibility, but there's also some inherent challenges with that, right? Folks who are independent contractors then don't have access to a lot of traditional style benefits. And so there's a trade off where people are making the decision that a lot of traditional types of compensation and benefits are less meaningful to them than some of these other less tangible things, which kind of makes me wonder, are there things that employers are offering that today's workers just simply don't care about? I mean, do you feel like employers and workers are aligned when it comes to what these total rewards are?
That's a really good question. That's a good question. I think because when you think about, yeah, like what do the people really want, how much attention do they really pay to that, all the details and the benefits. I'm sure that happens, right? Where a lot of people, obviously, they care about their medical coverage and those types of things, but kind of beyond that, I mean, everyone's kind of the same, right? If most people will say you can work from home when it's snowing. I mean, that's kind, because everybody can work from anywhere now. So there's a lot, that's a lot more common. So
Mhm.
flexibility becomes less critical. And what becomes more critical is the type of the work that you're doing and the type of the team that you're on and all those other things. So the benefits become less important because a lot of them are very similar when you look at what people care about most, probably. And they become less important, and that actual work itself becomes more important.
So I'd like to talk about maybe like salary and cash comp, right? There's a lot of factors that motivate workers, I think. There's a lot of research out there, right? You probably even know it better than I, right? That indicates that money it's not a primary motivator, right? Kind of exactly what you're talking about now, what you're referring to. Um, Anecdotally, I would say, with the folks that you work with, right, with the employee job seekers, excuse me, that you may work with, right, with the employers that you're working with, I'm curious what you're hearing from candidates around compensation, um, specifically.
No, it's a good question. For a while there was a period where it went like kind of out of whack, totally. Like expectations around salaries were really high. I feel like that's died down a bit and tempered down, and it really truly is because we've had a couple candidates recently that have I mean, and everybody, they have a certain range and they have a level of comfort, and it really does depend on your situation. They'll leave, they have a really far commute, and this commute's a lot closer. I mean, that makes a big difference for a lot of people. So they'll take less money to be closer to home. There's a lot of things that drive people, and a lot, but it really comes down most of the time to the type of environment that they're in, and how much they love that environment. Because if they love the environment, most of the time they're not going to be, they're rarely looking, and they'll rarely entertain a conversation with a recruiter if they're super happy where they're at. So they only start to respond to us when there's a little window, and that window generally comes from, sometimes it's compensation related because they've been around for a while and they should be at another, but more often than that, it's the environment. Something has changed about the environment or the work. There was an acquisition. The culture's changing. The team I got moved to a new team. I'm not doing the work I was hired to do.
Mm,
Oftentimes that's a lot of the time what we hear.
that's really interesting. The window.
Mhm.
Um, we're coining it here first. The
The win
window.
so, Curtis, we got to copyright all this. We got a lot of these today. We got to copyright this stuff.
It's true though, and that is a very, again, nothing I've ever articulated in that way before, but that is a very real thing, right? It's that little window. Something's changed a little bit, and now my ears might perk up, right, when I see a message from a recruiter and feel like maybe this is worth my time. Um, yeah, kind of fascinating. And you even talked about it before about the role that location can play. And this goes back to what job seekers or employees feel like is more important to them. Sometimes it's the commute, sometimes it's the remote flexibility. Some people, frankly, don't enjoy remote work at all, which is okay too.
Mhm.
But being aligned on that front, I guess, can really play a big part. I would be obviously remiss not to ask about culture. We're committed to building great culture. Fostering workplace happiness here at Mustard Hub, helping other organizations do the same thing. What role does an organization's culture play in the recruitment and hiring process? Obviously, not just when they're there, but in the process itself. Is it something? Is even something that most employers, or yeah, I mean, do employers consider it? Do the employees? Obviously, they consider it. How do they get that insight into what that culture looks
It's really interesting because there are clients that really understand how to treat candidates, right?
like?
That
Mhm.
because there's sort of a, a wooing kind of thing that has to happen from that. So you're trying to get them. You want to show them. You want the option to hire that person, right? You don't want them to walk away and say, whether they're super your number one candidate or not. You want to know that if that turns out to be the person you want, you have a really good shot at getting them. And employers seem to forget that sometimes. It's like a lot of employers, and they are not employers that we work with, because we work with a lot of really great clients that have wonderful cultures and welcome people and treat them well. But a lot of them have been in places I've worked historically too. You're lucky to be able to come and work here. You're lucky to be able to work for us. You know what? Not really. These people have a lot of options and a lot of choices. And if they're really desired candidates, you gotta win them over. You've got to treat them like with white gloves. I mean, I had, I remember when I was interviewing at Concordia College, my alma mater, and the doorbell rang one day. So this is the olden days when people, I mean, I guess it wasn't really, it wasn't Amazon. It was delivered by the mail or FedEx or something. And it was a card with a Concordia sweatshirt in this box saying, I really hope you come home to Concordia and work with us. And that was Eric Johnson, that was the VP of development at the time. And it was the most, I was blown away by that move as a candidate, because I was like, do I stay where I'm at? Do I make this change? And I loved the place I was going, but he just said, we really hope you come home and work at Concordia. And that little touch was just like, wow, I mean, how can you say no to that? And those are things that I think we just sort of lose track of and touch with, because we are so overwhelmed by everything, that it can just be a little, really show these people that you want them, and welcome them, and rather than, hey, if you're lucky, you'll get this job. If you're really lucky, that's not always the case.
I think what a lot of people forget is that, the employers and the job seekers are vetting each other, right? They're interviewing each other. For better or for worse, that's the direction that we've moved in. I think that it's a really good thing, and I think that
Hmm.
it keeps a lot of employers honest, keeps them on their toes, right? And sort of forces them to realize that we're looking to bring top talent on board. Top talent has opportunities to work in different places. We also need to put our best foot forward, right? And create an organization that frankly people want to come to and then stay at once they get there.
Yeah, once they're there.
You know, you have any thoughts on how employers can start building culture and establishing and reinforcing the organization's core values prior to even hiring?
That's a good thought. There are people that do it really well. There are people that make it their business, really, like in the gig economy, right, to help define and refine that culture. Because because when you do things and it's so innate in how you act and what you do, and that you don't even stop to think about it. So if you can have somebody that, either another employee that just can be a sort of an observer of, okay, what are the things that this hiring manager, this leader, this CEO, what are the things that this person is doing that are really standing out, that are making people want to be here? Because
Yeah.
when it's so natural to who you are, you don't even know what it is. And same on the other side of the coin too, right? So if you can sort of find somebody who can help you to articulate that, that's what I've been using people, just some marketing friends and people that I know that know me, because it was really a struggle for me to be able to say, okay, why work with us? What is it that we do? Because it's just the things that I do, and I figure every other recruiter does, but they don't. So how do you find somebody that knows that, that can help you to really discern what's unique about you and working with you, so that you can tell that story better? And it could also be a recruiter. It could be, I mean,
Right.
I can tell you why you should go work at my clients, that reasons that they don't know exist because they're in it. But I can
Yeah.
tell you, versus all these other companies, why this one is a really one to go to, right? For what you're looking for individually, especially.
I love that. And to start kind of wrapping things up a little bit, I'm wondering what you think the future of work's going to look like. As all this evolves, you think organizations are going to be more deliberate about how they support their people, including using more tech to do it? Do you see your own work adapting or evolving with a lot of these changes? And if so, I mean, how?
How? I know. I don't know if we can really know for sure what it's all going to look like, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just so much of it that we don't know about. I mean, I have a cousin who's majoring and getting her PhD in cognitive science and computer science. So she studies AI. That's her
Mm.
thing. And I asked her before I started the business whether or not I should start a business in recruiting, or if AI would take it over. And she just had a really great perspective on it. She said AI is going to make our lives a lot easier and a lot more efficient in a lot of ways. But like I said earlier,
People hire
people hire
people.
people. It's all the human piece of it. So I don't, unless we are completely wiped out, and it's there's no need to have human thought or critical thinking or true problem solving. I use AI sometimes to write, to write a synopsis for my movie. Help me write the synopsis. And I still need to write the synopsis, because
Right.
the synopsis doesn't, the tool will never know and understand the power and the impact that the movie will have on a movie viewer, on a viewer.
That's
Like
right.
I will understand it, like people understand it. So I don't think we're going to change. I mean, personally, I think people will still be relevant, I think,
It will be.
for a long time. I hope. Maybe that's just wishful thinking, but that's what I hope.
I don't know. I hope there's not a day where I have to send my avatar for an interview.
Right.
But tell me, tomorrow's leaders. What do they need to grasp about people and culture that I think a lot of today's leaders might be missing? Are there misconceptions, right, that they need to shake off when it comes to the people dynamics?
I think that's really interesting. Everybody, it's. I think truly the best leaders that I've worked for are the ones that sure they knew what they were doing. This kind of goes to recruiting too. That the skills are there, but it's how they interacted with me, how they understood and knew me, and what motivated me, and how I wanted to be treated and understood, and all those things. So I think it's just everybody is unique in how they respond to leadership and coaching, and the more connected you can be with your people
Yeah.
and the more you can understand what inspires and motivates them, I think the more you will inspire and motivate them.
Which I think kind of answers, the question I love to ask, at the end. If a leader comes to you for advice, right, on how to get it right, literally from day one, growing and retaining their teams, what's that one thing you're going to tell them?
Be authentic, be your authentic self. And,
Yeah.
but I don't think actually anybody can get it right from day one. That's
That's
what I
probably
really
the
think.
first authentic answer I've heard. You're right about that.
Nobody gets it right from day one. I came into my business going, I know I've been doing this a long time. I've revamped and regrouped at least a dozen times since I started, and I don't think you ever get it right from day one. But if you can learn from where you've taken that misstep and apply it and do better next time, that's how we all get better. We just have to. It's Malcolm Gladwell. It's failing forward, right? It's learning from everything that we do. Don't John Maxwell. It's John Maxwell. Failing forward, we learn from our skins and scrapes and bruises and bumps. And
Yeah, I love that. And I think that in the world of recruiting, I find that recruiters, and obviously, a lot of experts like you in your industry, that's who's done the most failing forward, right? When it comes to hiring people, right? The most experience, and having a lot of that to build on and to work from, right? Because hiring isn't an exact science. It's difficult. We don't always get it right. But if you have the breadth of experience that an individual like yourself does, we improve our chances for success. So
no,
I
definitely.
want to say thank you so much for speaking with me today, Becky. This was fantastic.
Chris, this was so much fun, Chris. Thank you for the invitation and for the work that you're doing and for this platform that you're providing people. It's awesome. So it was a really wonderful opportunity. I appreciate the
Yeah.
chance to connect. It was great. Thank you.
We're going to have to, trademark a few of these little quips we we got
There's a
on
book
our
in here
call.
somewhere, Chris. There's
There's a book in here somewhere. For all of you who are watching and listening to the episode, thank you for tuning in to Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, or otherwise engage with this fireside chat. And be sure to check us out at mustardhub.com to see how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. Until next time.